All right, sounds good. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started with the Instructional Policy Committee. We have, if you took a look at the board docs, we have a couple items to talk through today besides just regular updates. Most importantly is just to give you an update on what's been happening. Oh, is that Mrs. Mansfield? Hi.
Hi.
How are you? We were just getting started.
Good deal.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yep, you're
I
good.
couldn't find my headphones and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't hear in this house. There's too much going on.
That's always the new challenge.
Yes, it is. I realized at 4:14, I'm like, oh my God, no headphones.
But you have them now. I can see them. That's good. Well, Ryan just got us started live streaming, so we're good to go now. So in the actual board docs, we have a few items. Most importantly was just for me to be able to give you an update on how things are going in terms of our APS connected learning. Now that we actually are on spring break, because you all know. But we are very, very pleased in terms of the level of connectedness with our students. We did get through our, we have two different data sets that are real important, I think, for you all to understand how we're tracking students and monitoring their connectedness. The first way is we have the Google Analytics piece that we can see when students are actually engaged in their using their Chromebooks in any kind of activity that's happening. Because these are district devices that are all connected to our instructional resources, we can see when students are active on their Chromebook. So that, hello. So that data set is our ability to see when students are connected. And we call that kind of our connected data, because it doesn't necessarily mean, and this is the important distinction, it doesn't necessarily mean they're connected into their instructional lessons, because a student can be connected into their Chromebook, but not necessarily completing their assignments. I'm sure you've never could ever imagine that happening, but yes, a student can certainly be on, watching videos or doing games or doing something else, but not actually completing their lessons. So we can see that 95% of our students are connected at some point over this last 2 weeks of instruction. They've been connecting into their Chromebooks and are doing some kind of activities that trigger their Google Drive, which is where everything kind of lives. So we can see that activity. Now, but then we look at our attendance data, and over that 2-week time period, where the attendance of students who are actually actively engaged in their lessons, that's more around depending on the day, an 80% range. So even though 95% of the students are connecting into their Chromebooks, that same percentage is not connecting necessarily into their lessons on that regular basis. So what we've put into place is a kind of a 2-tiered system of support. We have what's called our connectors, which are staff who work in the schools that principals have identified to be the staff member who reaches out to the families of students who are not connecting into their lessons. So the teacher has actually taken attendance and said, no, they're not regularly connecting into their lesson. And so a connector then reaches out beyond what the teacher normally does. The connector then reaches out to the family to just troubleshoot. It's all a very positive, there's nothing punitive in terms of our approach. We don't come hardballing, because we know the circumstances of everybody's family life can be extraordinary during this time, obviously, and a wide range of what's happening in their life, from illness and from families working in the healthcare system, from disruptive living environments right now. There's so many different things going on. So the connector reaches out in a supportive way to the family to help troubleshoot. And we have found from the connectors, there's kind of a range of support providing. Sometimes it is just stepping the families through, with young kids in particular, how to use the Chromebook to get connected. And it's just coaching them through that. Sometimes it's making referrals to food assistance and some basic need assistance. Sometimes the families that I think I've mentioned to you before have said, that attendance data can't be right because I see my kid every day working on that Chromebook, but what we've discovered is they're not actually working on their schoolwork. And so
been there.
Yeah, so that's a different conversation than to help the parents learn how to actually work with the parent to make sure that they're actually completing their schoolwork. And so each conversation between the connectors and the families is very unique and different. Then we have a second tier of a team that we're putting together this week called the Internet Elite Team, which is a team that has special knowledge of the 3 ways to get connected to the internet. And so we're really relying on a referral from the connectors or from the principals for anyone who doesn't have the internet, and just a kind of a basic troubleshoot doesn't help them get there. Then we can refer to this team who can actually step side by side through families to help them navigate the 3 basic ways for internet connection. And that's, getting an internet provider connected into your home that's using your cell phone as a hotspot, and learning which companies are offering unlimited data during this pandemic time. And then the third way is that we can provide a hotspot. We have limited numbers, but we can provide that on a kind of a need basis once we can see that the other 2 options may not work. So we have a team that can, and this isn't a team that just provides a little guidance and then sends families on their way. This is a team that can do a conference call with the internet providers to help them every step of the way to get connected. It's more like a case manager or a social work kind of role versus tech support role, if that makes sense. Our goal is 100% connected, because no matter what, paper pencil can never replicate the quality education that happens via the Chromebook. And so we really don't want to rely on any paper pencil. We want to put all of our energies towards getting families connected, and preferably getting them connected for the long term, past these 2 months time. So that's our goal. So we're doing, for us to see that 95% of the kids have connected in, although that doesn't necessarily mean they've fully engaged in all their learning yet, we at least feel confident that we're not losing huge groups of students because they can't get internet and can't get connected. We have 350 hotspots that we have in our hands right now that we're working through referrals from principals and from connectors to get those out, and they're being delivered this week. And then we'll look at kind of the next wave as we go for this next week. So I'll pause for a second there just about the connectors and the and kind of how we're doing so far.
Yeah, this is Derek. I just have a couple follow-up questions, if I may. So I'm using as my denominator 20,000 students, just to have a good even number of sort of how many students we're talking about kind of in the district, right? So we're saying that 95% of students are connected. Using 20K as my number, that still means that we still have 1,000 students who haven't connected at all across Akron. I'm wondering if we have data around where those students are located at. Like, are they tending to be concentrated in certain zip codes or clusters, or around certain schools, or are those 1,000 students pretty dispersed evenly? My sense is that they're probably not, but I'd be interested to kind of hear that. So to go along with it, so if we have 80% that are connecting in the lessons, that still means 4,000 are not connecting, into lessons. Now, granted, we don't know that it's the same 20% that are not connecting, so maybe it's less than 4,000, but it still seems to be, it's still significant. And by the way, I know we're still early, so again, I don't want to sound like I'm being like Debbie Downer here, or Donald Downer, to be, gender neutral here about this. Thanks, Diana. You laughed. I appreciate that. Courtesy laugh. I appreciate that. So I get we're still early, and I get that we're still trying to fight through a number of things, and so I don't want to sound like I'm not appreciative of all the hard work that's being done. I just want to ask these questions. I know that the last one I was really kind of trying to get a feel for how are we going after the students who are falling through the cracks, and so it might be 1,000 kids, might be 500 kids. We might say, God, we're at 95% are getting everything done. Well, in hard numbers, that still means that there's 1,000 kids out there in the district that have fallen through the cracks. And so I know that you've addressed a lot of what I was going to ask, sort of as you walk through the connectors piece. Right. I did want to ask, when we, and I know we're new, so as we're looking at, as we're learning how to connect data, collect data and aggregate data, and kind of really work through how we analyze online student involvement. I am curious, sort of globally, do we, if we know yet, how many students have not connected and not attended a single class, and we've not been able to reach them via a connector. So, because my sense is that there are going to be students who are just for whatever reason, we're not reaching these kids, because they may have adverse home environments. And granted, we can't control that, but it'd be nice if we at least had a feel for how many students were we talking about. Second sort of question was going to be around, has there been any additional guidance from the state on how we're defining attendance or tracking attendance or holding accountable for attendance? I know last week I think we said that there wasn't anything that had come out from the state yet. I'm wondering if there's been any additional guidance around that. And then my third and final question for this segment is, as we're sort of thinking through the connector piece, do we know, are there targets in place as to how many students a connector would be accountable for, I guess, following and helping to get connected? Because it sounds like the connectors, Ellen, to your point, they're helping to answer questions, but they're also helping address other social issues as well, food insecurity and things like that. So I'm wondering, so it sounds a lot like a caseworker in a lot of respects, social worker. Do we have any ideas as to sort of how many students at a time the connectors would have on their, I guess, as on their case, as far as their case numbers? And I'll stop talking. So again, those are my sort of my three questions.
So the state guidance, let me take that one first. The state has, because of the diversity of districts across the state during this pandemic time, what they're able to do. I think I've told you before that when one of the state surveys showed that 65% of the districts are doing some type of online learning. So when you think of 65%, that means the rest are doing some kind of paper pencil version, which is even more difficult to take attendance for a paper pencil version because of all the complexity of trying to get the paper pencil delivered back to the school somehow, if even possible. Or they might just be sending packets home and not having any kind of expectation of them coming back just for the safety of students and the staff with the paper pencil going back, paper products going back and forth. So when you think of that large group of districts that aren't even doing online, then when you look at the 65% of the districts that are doing some type of online, there's a very wide range within that from where we are, where we're providing daily instruction. A lot of that is live with kids or posting Google Classroom, activities. That's a part of the 65%. And but some districts are only posting lessons on a website for kids to go find at a district level. So even within the 65% that are doing online lessons, there's a wide range even among that group. So the state has come out and really said, from their perspective locally, we all have to figure out how we can do attendance ourselves. And there's going to be, basically from the state perspective, what we report to the state is going to be that 100% of our students are attending on our reports. So they're not going to force some kind of attendance system that all these diverse districts during this pandemic time are going to have to all abide by. It's impossible for them. So what we decided to do was similar to what a lot of, because we've run online schools for years here in the district, we did sort of a hybrid version of the attendance where there's 3 tiers. Either students are fully engaged in their lessons and are actively participating. They're partially participating, which means they come in and out, but they are, they're there, and they're aware of their lessons, and they're participating in some way. And then the last category is 0 participation, none at all, haven't heard from them whatsoever. So when you look at those 3 tier, that's what we're keeping for the Akron Public Schools, because that feeds our whole connector system then. Because the kids who are not connecting at all are the ones that teachers try to reach out first, then they make a referral to be assigned sort of this case manager, connector type person, and then the family reach out happens. And then if they need that specialized internet connection kind of support, then we have that special team that can also help. So that's sort of the trajectory of support.
Ellen, I just went on and added into the chat the link that explains that attendance policy for parents. That portal is really helpful for us too, not just for parents, especially if you have people asking you questions. So I spend a lot of time going in and out of our COVID stuff just to check it. Right. So I just posted that linked into the chat so you can look at it. Explains exactly what the attendance marks mean so that when parents are seeing those. So like if I wanted to check to make sure that I see my kid on their Chromebook, are they playing Fortnite or are they doing math? I can go in and it kind of tells the parent that. So it's a nice clue.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing that. So the attendance patterns, and we have to remember that in a brick and mortar world, we have students that attend and some students that don't, right? And even when a student walks into a building, they may be present, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're engaged in their learning. That student may walk in the door, but not do their assignments, right? They may not have done their homework. They may not do anything in class where they actually get a grade. So in an online environment, the same behaviors can occur where you can even connect into your classroom, into your Google Classroom, but not necessarily complete assignments and be engaged. And you can also look like you're going into a Google Classroom, but not. There's all that range that occurs. So when we look at our data, the actual numbers of students, and remember, there's two very different data sets. One is they're engaged with their lessons and they're attending based on the teachers saying, yes, this student has been participating, has connected with me, and is working with me in my classroom. And then there's the other data set that we can see who's using their Chromebooks and doing some kind of activity in their Google Drive. And that's a different data set. So those are two very different things. They're both helpful. You have to have both of them, because we want to know who needs internet support, because that's the biggest barrier for kids. That our goal is to get to 100% of our kids are connected. So we have to know and watch the Google Chromebook activity, because we can see whether they're connected somehow by the internet. And if they're not, we have 700, the exact number, Dr. Hall, is we have 757 students who we see zero internet connectivity, okay? 757. There are 19,632 students that we see having some type, just these past 9 days, that we see them using their Chromebooks and they're connected to the internet. So that is an important data set, because that's where we can target those 757 students, and they have connectors. But we also, Howard Lawson's staff is working with that group, making phone calls, making sure they get the internet. And our goal is to get all the hotspots distributed, plus, more importantly, our goal is to get them connected through internet lines in their homes, or through using their cell phone as a hotspot, because that's a more long-term solution instead of just borrowing a hotspot, for 2 months right now. So, and that distribution of the 757 students, it is pretty distributed across our schools. There's kids in every single school that we, haven't seen the connection, but it is a little higher percentage in homes that have higher low-income population. But that's why we can see every single grade, we can see every single kid. We know exactly who they are, and we're working through that list.
So can we verify? So can we verify? I know that we were making sure that I think buildings were delivering Chromebooks to folks who hadn't come to pick them up. Do we know for sure that those 700 plus students do we know that they all actually got a Chromebook?
We are down to just a handful of Chromebooks. One thing we did, some of the Chromebooks that we had, the families actually said, well, we left them because we have a computer at home and we didn't really need it. We still tried to distribute them just to make sure that they had it. But if a student uses their home computer and logs into their account to get into the portal that we use, that we still can see that. That's still part of the Google Drive activity that we can see.
So I think the last question I was going to ask, and I apologize for all the questions to everybody else. I'm not trying to monopolize the call. So what percentage of the students in the district would you say are interacting in a meaningful enough way that we would feel confident saying that they're learning? Is that 80% number you were talking about, or is that a different number?
Yeah, it's more around the 80 to 85% of students have been engaged in their lessons.
Okay.
Their actual instruction. Yes.
Okay, because I know about a week ago, I think that number was 60 to 75%. So it sounds like that's improved then.
It has improved due to the connectors. Now,
Gotcha.
Word, that is any students, that's not necessarily, who's completing every single assignment. That's students
Right.
who are connecting, who are aware that there's instruction going on, who have connected with the teacher. That's the level of engagement that we're seeing.
Great. Thank you so much for all that.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Sure. The second thing, just in terms of all of the APS connected learning procedures that we have in place. We have in the faculty toolkit that you all also have access to, it's about 30 some guidance documents that we have in place for this APS connected learning. And it's things like how we're going to issue continuing education credits for teachers during this time. It's things like how are we going to take attendance during this time that we were just talking about. It's our special education procedures. It's everything that we had to make sure that adjusted to this online environment, both on the faculty side and the student side. Here's kind of the rules of how we're going to proceed during this time. We're very interested, especially when we think about what life is going to be like potentially this summer and in the fall, and really preparing for this kind of experience regardless of when in our future. We're really building a system of connected learning that we could move in and out of now seamlessly whenever we needed to. It could be during another pandemic time. It could be even next fall if we find in Ohio there's times when we need to separate for 14 days and learn from home and then come back. It could be during a calamity like a tornado comes through and for 2 weeks we're shut down, or 3 weeks we're shut down. Who knows? It's all that emergency preparedness that we have a board policy around, and we have an extensive emergency plan in every single building. And it talks about this continuity of instruction and making sure that we're, and it even says that going to internet-based instruction if needed. Now we've built the infrastructure to be able to do this seamlessly with these guidance documents. And we would be able to, no matter 3 years from now, if we needed to do something, or if we wanted to offer a whole summer session around this, maybe because we lost instruction for some reason, we could just put these in place, which is, we see as a much better way to think about what we're doing right now, instead of thinking of it as just this one crisis where we're just doing it during this one moment in time. We believe this is a platform that we could use forever in the future whenever needed. And I just wanted to hear your feedback on that.
I have a quick question. I don't think it's totally unrelated. Can you foresee a time when we no longer need calamity days?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when the state shifted from instructional days to instructional hours, it freed us up in Akron, similar to most districts, where we actually had more hours and more days then that we could use without having to make them up, because we were actually providing more hours than the state minimum instructional hours. We still call it a calamity day, like if we're off, but we haven't had to make up days because of this cushion that we had in our calendar. Then you add on top of that, when the state permitted, they called them blizzard bags, that you could actually make up time. Even if you did exhaust your instructional hours, you could make up time using blizzard lessons. which we have done in the past, then that really erases the need for any kind of calamity day. If we had 4 blizzard days and we're getting close to our limit of instructional hours, it would be easy for us to just say that we're going to make this up using APS connected learning for those 4 days. And it could wipe out, any risk of going over our hours. So yes, so in essence, yes, we would never need to have makeup days or that notion of making up a calamity day. We would never need to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, hey, Ellen. So go back to your question. So I think what I heard you ask was, you were saying like you were interested in kind of hearing our thoughts on sort of as we move forward in this online learning platform being used in other additional creative ways moving forward. I think you were looking for kind of feedback on what our thoughts were on that. Was that your question?
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, so I guess I'll weigh in first then. No, I think I would love to see us do that. I mean, especially as we start to think creatively around how we might begin to offer some additional sort of summer enrichment classes or opportunities for our kids. Granted, I get that there's some students that are going to want to do college courses. They can do that, but that may not work for every student, right? And maybe for freshmen and sophomores per se, or maybe you could even use this as a way of providing some traditional remedial summer school instruction. You could do it online for certain students, right? So, and I know that the way that you think, you've got probably 20 more ways that we could be using that we're not even thinking about. But for me, like I would love to see us use this online learning platform in a plethora of other ways. I would love to kind of hear your ideas as whether it's now or in the future as to how, as other uses that we could put this toward. Because again, we've already been competing against sort of online instruction for a while anyway. And this whole pandemic has kind of given us, a real reason, an opportunity to have to acquire this competency and get good at it really quick. So I think maybe where you're going is like, I'd hate to see that kind of go away. I mean, we put all this work into acquiring this competency and trying to get good at this. Let's continue to utilize it. Let's not let it evaporate.
Right. What we've had for years now is 2 things that this was one additional piece that helped us make this transition. I almost was going to say pretty easily, although everybody would laugh to believe that this was actually easy, because it's different to flip 21,000 kids to online learning, but we did have 2 things in place. We started the Akron Digital Academy, which was an online school that was actually a district hosted charter school for a number of years, 15 some years. And then we decided to get out of doing a separate charter school and just setting up our own. So we did APS Online, which is our own online, 100% online learning program. But it can also be course by course. So Dr. Hall, when you're talking about, an advanced course in something, that we can also do a course by course offering through APS Online. Running that and the experience with Akron Digital Academy before certainly helped that we had a lot of staff in the district who knows how to do online learning day to day. Now, doing it with 21,000 students is a little bit different than, a smaller program, and that's where we had to go to scale with it. The second thing, in the summertime, our secondary summer school is already almost exclusively online for our middle school and high school. So students, especially for credit recovery, but then some credit advancement, was all online. So we were able to kind of tap into that expertise too, especially for our high school students, on how do we make that transition. We will never go back. We also provide some face-to-face support during that summer school so that we get a little bit of best of both worlds, but the foundation is an online platform. So we'll never go backwards from that. But I think this because it's a whole district platform, it enables us to think about what the superintendent has talked about with that third semester in the summertime. What would that look like? And could we do some kind of blended third semester type approach for credit advancement and for enrichment, other, softer kind of enrichment activities and interventions? We could probably pull that off pretty easily now, as long as we had the staff to support that in a third semester. And then any kind of crisis calamity that we would want to, or even through breaks, like over Christmas break, if there were students who wanted to take, similar to a university schedule where they have those intersessions, we could easily do intersessions now. So I think it opens up a lot of other opportunities now that we've built it in this large scale. The only other thing that I want to talk about in terms of the APS connected learning and the guidance documents is this week we're finalizing our graduation guidance document that's not posted yet, but it will be by the end of this week, that we all have talked about as part of instructional policy. But we have communication tools now for families and for students, our seniors, to understand how the choices they're going to have in those last 33 days of school. Based on ODE's guidance, they're really letting districts have authority, fortunately, over deciding basically two things. One is which students are already, as of March 17th, had already met the graduation requirements outlined by the state in terms of credits and any kind of graduation pathway, like the test, earning 18 points on the test, or one of the alternative pathways, like some of the career pathways. So when we look at that cohort, they have provided guidance on a second cohort that we can decide who basically were on track to graduate. Had we had normal brick and mortar school the rest of the year, the students would have been fine. So they were on track to earn their credits, and they were on track to earn their graduation, their other graduation requirements. When the state has given us that guidance, and what was one thing that was surprising with that guidance was that they really focused exclusively on this on-track definition for students who had credits that were on track. They focused on the course requirements and the earning credits instead of trying to tackle all of the other graduation requirements that come in. And they let us as a district decide how to think about kind of the rest of the graduation requirements. So we will be able to provide by the end of this week in communication to the seniors and to the families, based on where they are, whether they're on track or whether they need to pick up some credits through credit recovery that the students would have already been enrolled in. They're going to be able to have some choices how to finish out the year. So if you're off track and you need to make up some credits that you lost sometime during your high school years, you're obviously going to focus almost exclusively on making up those credits and finishing out strong this last part of the year. But if you're on track, we're going to give you some additional flexibility to be able to finish out the year, either focusing on your courses, focusing on your advanced placement exam, your college credit plus courses, the course finishing, or you can also focus on your 3 E's, which is your enlisting, enrolling, or getting employed right out of high school. And we're going to support you in that. So each senior will individually be able to, they're going to have a conference early this next week with their counselor and their academy principal to here's where you are, whether you're on track or not on track, and here's how you can finish your last 33 days of school. We're real pleased that the state gave us this flexibility. And I think it's because of that diversity that I just described with the districts across the state, that they really needed to make it, almost exclusively a local decision with very few kind of, Mrs. Mansfield and Ms. McKittrick, I was worried about what kind of bumpers they were going to provide for that description of on track, and they've really left it very wide open for us. So do you have any questions about that?
So it's almost a do no harm kind of philosophy, right?
Yeah, it really is. It sort of frees up the students to not have to focus on everything, this last 33 days of school that we'll have when we come back. It can tailor based on what they need. And I'm glad that our teachers who are teaching seniors are going to be able to focus on the seniors who really need that support the most. And the students who are deemed on track will be able to have some choices in terms of how they want to finish, depending on what they're going to be doing after high school. For students who are going on to college, who want to boost their GPA or want to make sure the AP exam or study for their international baccalaureate exams, those types of things, they're going to be, they'll be able to choose that type of focus. And then I also put on the.
Hey, Ellen, I'm sorry, real quick.
Yes.
You mentioned that there were two cohorts. There were the cohort A that was prior to March 17th. They were on track to graduate. I'm sorry, they'd already fulfilled all the grad requirements prior to March 17th. There was a cohort that was on track to graduate. What about the cohort of people so is there a cohort of people that were not on track to graduate that we were working feverishly to try to get on track?
Yeah, there's basically, it's on track and off track. There's two groups, but within both of those, there's going to be 4 cohorts total, but it's basically 2 groups. Either you're on track to graduate, and by being on track, you have already met the qualifications, or you would have met them had we been in a brick and mortar kind of situation. So those are all the kids that the state are saying you can call all of those kids on track. And then there's off track is anyone who has lost credit or doesn't have the credits and wouldn't be able to finish those credits, this senior year if they were just in their normal courses. So someplace they got behind. That's the off track group. It's all exclusively based on your credits earned in your courses. Okay.
Thank you.
Good news on our agenda is that we again this year were named from the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation, which is a national music education organization, that we were named among the best communities for music education. We've received this in past years, and there's a description in the agenda, but it recognizes Akron you have to complete a whole application showing all of the wide range of music education services that we provide in the district. And the designation is for K-12 for us, which is also great. So it's not just high school, but it's a K-12 recognition. So it's called the Best Communities for Music Education. And this is a national designation. So it's very exciting. And we'll put out a press release about it. If it didn't go out today, we'll put that out there. But be sure to congratulate Dawn Wilson and Karen Gijic and all of the music educators. We're very proud of the services they provide and all the different music programs that we offer K-12. You don't realize until you get a part of the national kind of scene on how exemplary our music and arts kind of education is. So many districts have eliminated fine arts programming over the years through budget cuts, and we really have not been that district that has eliminated services. We've tried very hard to keep everything, even during our toughest times. We tried to keep, or if we had to lose something for a couple years, we brought it back to make sure. The superintendent and I are both huge proponents of the arts in education. Both of our kids are in the fine arts. That certainly helps to have that pressure from our own children that we keep the arts programming strong in the district. So it's nice to have that national recognition. The only other thing that's on here is the update from our normal update from the college and career academies, which you can just take a look at. It has the everything from March and April. So it was sort of the things that happened right before we ended up learning from home, but it does have some nice recognitions of some of our students, including one of our Booksville students who's a finalist for the Young Entrepreneur Pitch Challenge, and some of the other featured accomplishments for our College and Career Academy students. So be sure to take a look at that, and we'll share that with the whole board as well. The only update from I Promise was the documentary that we all have talked about, and hopefully everyone has seen by now. So that was the only update from them. So any questions or other agenda items, particularly Mrs. Mansfield and Ms. McKittrick? Did you have anything?
No, I don't.
I think I've been reaching out as questions arise, trying to just keep asking lots of questions, lots of emails. So thanks for everybody who's been answering those.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So I know you mentioned the challenges of the paper pencil, but I know our kindergarten through, is it second, who don't have the computers, is there anything that you can report out on those grade levels since they don't have the online?
We actually do. We are one-to-one all the way preschool through 12th grade. Our preschool kids have little tablets even. So we are one-to-one all the way. For our K-2 during the year, the teachers, they're one-to-one in the classroom, and the teachers choose what nights they want the kids to bring them home based on their lessons. But as soon as we saw this pandemic, coming, and we could sort of see the writing on the wall that our students were going to be sent home. Obviously, at the beginning, we thought for 3 weeks. We dismantled all the carts in those K-2 classrooms, and we sent the Chromebooks home with every single family. Any kids that were absent those last few days, we've hand delivered every single Chromebook home now to the primary age. And we've done everybody else as well, but we made sure that the kindergarten, first and second grade students had Chromebooks. So they're home, their teachers are teaching just like everybody else. The kindergarten students, when you look at the attendance data and the participation, our kindergarten students, out of the 757 students that we haven't heard from in terms of any kind of connection into their Chromebooks and doing something in their Google Drives, 132 of those are kindergarten students. And so that is the largest group of students in the district. Even though they have the Chromebooks, obviously with kindergarten students, there's more dependency on the families to help with that connection. Some of our kindergarten classes have, 90% of their kids connected, even some have 100%, and they're doing really well. Others are struggling to get the highest number. And it's not because of the kids and family, will and the importance of education. It's just the complexity of work schedules and home lives right now, because the kindergarten students need more support, many of them, to get connected. So that group is where we're spending a good amount of time with the connectors to try to help the families and let them know it doesn't have to be during the school day. If they work during the day and they're home in the evening, the students can get connected whenever, and that's true for all students. They can get connected in the evening time to get into their lessons. The other thing we're doing is we've put together, in collaboration with our kindergarten teachers, especially, as we put together some additional supplemental packets that are activity-based, they're sort of kits that are going to be mailed home to the kindergarten families. And we may pick up some first grade students too, so that they have some kind of other hands-on supplemental activities that they can do beyond just the digital. We're also doing some, and you may be asked to do this, we're doing some reading at home, or kind of guest readers doing some book reading in the evening that families can connect to, just to have some audio kind of book situations from famous people in the city, and I'm sure you all will be asked to read a book and videotape yourselves so that you can be piped into our homes for our youngest readers as well. So we're doing supplements for that for our youngest, especially our kindergarten. The rest of our grades really are doing very well. Our third grade, our fourth grade, our attendance rates are all kind of above that 85% for the young grades. So it's really that kindergarten and some of the first grade students that we have to be the most concerned about. And our preschool teachers are doing amazing things with the tablets. They really are they have figured a way to do hands-on activities while the kids are on their tablets. And the families have been able to help with that. So it's been great. So even our preschool.
Well, I can't say I can't wait to hear Miss Mansfield read a book with all her dramatic stylings and weather vane pedigree. I can't wait to hear her, because there's reading a book and then there's reading a book, right?
We'll do it together, Dr. Hall. We'll do it together.
Okay.
It'll be a duet of sorts.
We're going to close down Audible when this is all done.
We'll have to do the one that
all of your names on the list, so you will all have an opportunity.
We'll have to do the one like the lunch person over at Hatton. Is that where it was? That does the one about the dog that is flatulent. I think that would be.
It's gonna be fun, I'm sure. Yeah.
Good stuff, everybody.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Good to see your faces. Miss everybody.
Right. Well, take care, everybody. Good to see all of you.
Stay safe, all.
Please.
Okay, you too. You too.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.